Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, I continue bringing you the story of Hoài Ca and Hùng. In the previous episode, Hoài Ca and Hùng had just finished the meaningful early days of spring, days when the sunlight still lingered on the porch and reflected in their eyes and smiles. After a short but emotional trip to Sapa, they returned home carrying not only memories captured in photos, but also a dream of a small flower garden in front of their house, a place where each morning they could wake up to the gentle colors of nature and feel peace in every breath. Hùng was preparing to return to work, hoping he could transfer closer to home so he could spend more time with Hoài Ca, so their dinners would no longer be rushed and each day could be shared more fully together. Meanwhile, Hoài Ca's adoptive brother came to visit with good news about a major contract he had just signed, his eyes filled with hope for the future. He gave Tony some lucky money before quickly leaving, as if there were still many things left unsaid. Everything seemed to settle there, like a quiet pause in the hopeful rhythm of the new year. But the next morning, when the sunlight was still soft and the early mist had not completely faded, Hoài Ca stood on the porch, carefully watering each newly planted flower pot. The young sprouts were still fragile, their green leaves gently swaying in the breeze. She cared for each plant as if nurturing her own dreams. The soft sound of flowing water blended with the peaceful atmosphere, creating a calm and simple morning. Suddenly, a black car slowly stopped in front of the gate. The sound of the engine broke the silence, making her look up. In that moment, everything seemed to slow down. The car door opened. Ha stepped out, no longer rushed like the day before. Today he appeared calm and composed. His clothes were neatly pressed, his steps more confident, and his eyes steady, as if he had made an important decision. In his hand was a black suitcase, held firmly, but without showing off. The sight made Hoài Ca pause, feeling both surprised and confused. Why are you here so early? She asked softly, her voice gentle but filled with curiosity. He smiled, not just a polite smile, but one that carried something deeper, like long-held gratitude. I came to do something I should have done a long time ago. His words echoed in the clear morning air, slow but full of determination. At that moment, Hùng walked out of the house. Adjusting his sleeve, he looked toward the gate, his eyes stopping at the suitcase in Ha's hand. The surprise passed quickly, but he remained calm and politely invited Ha inside. The atmosphere suddenly became more serious, as if something important was about to happen. The suitcase was placed on the table, firm and deliberate. Ha slowly unlocked it. The clicking sound echoed clearly in the quiet room. When he opened it, inside were neatly stacked bundles of cash, carefully arranged.
Hoài Ca for the...
Her hands unconsciously tightened together. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice slightly trembling, not from fear, but from surprise. Ha's voice became deeper, no longer excited like yesterday, but filled with sincerity shaped by difficult times. "This is the money I borrowed from you and Hùng when my project was struggling. Without your help back then, I wouldn't have made it. Yesterday, I didn't say everything. A new investor has already placed a deposit for the hotel project. Everything is going very well now." Every word was clear and steady, showing this was not a sudden decision. He gently pushed the suitcase toward them, his eyes firm but emotional. "I'm returning all the money I borrowed. And this is a little extra as my gratitude. Without you and Hùng during my hardest time, I wouldn't be where I am today." The room fell silent. Sunlight streamed through the door, reflecting off the stacks of money, but what stood out most was Ha's sincere expression. Hoài Ca looked at him, then at Hùng. In their eyes, there was no excitement about the money, only the emotions of a journey they had shared, the worries, the unconditional help, and the trust placed in the right person. That moment was not just about repaying a debt. It was the closing of a difficult chapter, a confirmation that kindness had taken root and blossomed. And as the story continues, the choices Hoài Ca and Hùng make in front of that suitcase will lead to even deeper emotions on the journey ahead. The room fell silent for a few seconds. The silence wasn't heavy. It felt like a necessary pause for each person to listen to their own heartbeat. Sunlight from the porch still stretched across the tiled floor, casting a soft glow onto the half-open suitcase on the table, yet no one seemed to pay attention to the stacks of money inside anymore. Hoài Ca looked at Hùng. Her gaze was steady, not wavering or confused, just deep and lingering, as if that single moment was enough for them to understand each other. Hùng looked back at her. No words, no gestures were needed. Between them existed a quiet yet unshakable connection. The days they had spent together, the decisions they had made side by side, had taught them that what truly mattered was never material value. Hùng gently shook his head, a small but firm gesture. We'll only take back the amount you borrowed from us. The rest you should keep. His voice was calm, not raised, not overly polite, but clear and sincere. It wasn't a refusal out of pride or awkwardness. It was a choice he had already made in his heart before speaking. Hoài Ca softly added, her voice gentle yet full of trust. You've helped me since I was little. You're like a brother to me. When you were struggling, helping you was the right thing to do. Now that things are going well, you should keep the money and continue investing. There's still a long road ahead. Her words weren't elaborate, but they carried the weight of a shared past. In every sentence was the respect for a bond that had endured many ups and downs. Hoài Ca wasn't looking at the money. She was looking at Ha's future, a path he still had to build, with many challenges ahead. Ha paused, slightly choked with emotion. It showed clearly in his eyes. His hand, resting on the suitcase, tightened briefly before relaxing again. Perhaps he had prepared many words to persuade them, many reasons to prove he wanted to repay more, but in the face of such sincerity, all those words now felt unnecessary. But I want to make it up to you. His voice lowered, carrying a trace of guilt from the difficult days he had gone through.
Hùng smile.
A small smile, but warm and steady. If you want to make it up to us, then make your project successful. Earn more. And then find your mother and take care of her. That's what matters most. His words weren't just advice. They were a reminder of responsibility and true purpose. Money could be returned, but what mattered more was what Ha could do for the future, for himself, for his mother, and for those who had always believed in him. At the mention of his mother, Ha's expression softened. A quiet moment passed, filled with countless thoughts. Over the years, worries, failures, sleepless nights, his mother had always been in the background of it all. That lingering sense of guilt had never left him. I will find her. When the project is finished, when everything is more stable, I'll bring her home. She has suffered too much all these years. His voice was slow, each word spoken with determination. It was no longer a vague promise, but a goal he had set for himself. In his eyes, there was no hesitation, only resolve. Hoài Ca spoke softly, a gentle smile on her lips. I believe you can do it. You've already made it through the hardest time. Her words were more of a confirmation than encouragement. They had seen him survive the days when it seemed impossible to stand again. And if he had risen from that depth, then the road ahead, no matter how long, was no longer as frightening. After some persuasion, Hoài Ca and Hùng finally accepted only the exact amount they had lent before, no more, no less. The rest, they firmly placed back into Ha's hands. Their firmness wasn't rigid. It was calm and clear. They didn't want him to feel indebted emotionally. nor to think that every act of kindness had to be measured in money. The suitcase was closed. The soft click of the lock echoed gently, yet it marked the end of a chapter. Not the end of their bond, but the end of the worries that once existed between them. The money returned to where it belonged, but the trust and connection remained. Ha stood up, looking at Hoài Ca, then at Hùng. In his eyes was deep gratitude, no longer heavy. He understood that what they had given him was not just financial help, but trust and respect. Yet within each of them, a different feeling quietly unfolded. Not regret for refusing a large sum of money, not pride for helping someone, but a sense of lightness and warmth, like knowing that in a world full of uncertainty, there are still relationships built on sincerity, responsibility, and understanding. It wasn't about money. It was about something far more valuable, true human connection. Before leaving, Ha paused at the gate, his eyes slowly scanning everything around as if trying to memorize every familiar detail. The small house was neither grand nor spacious, yet it carried a warmth of its own. A few drops of water still lingered on the porch from earlier watering. The simple iron fence stood quietly, and in front were newly planted flower pots that had not yet taken root. Everything appeared simple and sincere, just like the way Hoài Ca and Hùng had treated him all this time. He took a deep breath, then spoke slowly. I owe you both a debt of gratitude. No matter what happens in the future, I will never forget it. His voice was no longer choked with emotion like before, but it still carried deep feelings. It wasn't a polite remark. It was something etched into his heart. The difficult days that once felt impossible to overcome, the anxious phone calls, the money given without hesitation, all replayed in his mind like a slow-moving film. Hùng stepped forward and gently patted Ha on the shoulder. The gesture was simple, yet full of closeness. We're family. No one owes anyone anything. The words echoed softly in the morning yard, gentle but firm. There was no sense of calculation, no feeling of debt or repayment. Just a natural bond between people who saw each other as family. Standing beside them, Hoài Ca's gaze softened. She understood that what mattered most now wasn't what had been given or received, but the trust between them remained intact. The car slowly rolled away. The soft sound of tires on the small road faded into the distance. Hoài Ca stood beside Hùng. Neither of them said a word, quietly watching until the car disappeared at the end of the road. The village path remained the same, straight and peaceful, lined with trees welcoming the early sunlight. When the car was no longer in sight, the space returned to its familiar stillness. Under the morning sun, the garden in front of the house became clearer. There were still patches of soil not yet finished, empty spaces waiting to be filled. The ground was still rough and uneven, but it had been turned over, ready for a new season of planting. The newly planted flowers stood quietly in the sunlight, their stems still thin, their leaves still young, as if waiting for time to prove they could take root deeply in this soil. Life is the same. It is not always smooth. There are times when hardship weighs the heart down. There are times when scarcity slows one's steps. But if the soil is cared for, if the seeds are trusted, then even if it takes time, green shoots will eventually rise. Just like the bond that had been preserved in that small house, quiet, unassuming, yet strong enough to carry each other through long journeys. Hoài Ca gently held Hùng hand. Her hand was small but warm. It wasn't a gesture to seek support, but to stand firm together. She looked out at the garden ahead, her eyes brighter. I believe things will get better from now on. The faith in her voice was no longer uncertain like in the early days of the new year. It had become steadier after everything that had happened. Seeing Ha overcome his struggles, seeing kindness placed in the right place, made her believe even more that what they were building would one day bear fruit. Hung looked at her, his eyes filled with trust and determination. As long as we keep trying together, the future will surely be bright. It wasn't a grand promise, but a quiet commitment. He knew there was still much ahead. His work, his hope of transferring closer to home, their plans for the garden, for a more stable life. But when two people share the same direction, even challenges begin to feel lighter. Far away, a new journey was opening for Ha. The car was carrying him back to his project, to bigger plans, to his goal of completing everything, so he could soon bring his mother home. The road ahead might still be long, but now it was filled with confidence and determination. And here, in that small, simple house, hope was quietly growing day by day. It grew in every patch of soil being nurtured, in every flower waiting to bloom, in the trusting eyes of Hoài Ca and Hung as they looked toward the future. Not loud, not hurried, but steady and certain, like young shoots reaching for the sunlight, like dreams slowly taking shape in the simplicity of everyday life. Before leaving, Ha paused at the gate, his eyes slowly sweeping around as if trying to memorize every familiar detail. The small house was not luxurious or spacious, yet it carried a warmth of its own. A few drops of water still clung to the porch from earlier watering. The simple iron fence stood quietly, and in front were newly planted flower pots that had not yet taken root. Everything appeared simple yet sincere, just like the way Hoài Ca and Hung had cared for him all this time. He took a gentle breath, then spoke slowly. "I owe you both a debt of gratitude. No matter what happens in the future, I will never forget it." His voice was no longer choked like before, but it still held deep emotion. It wasn't just a polite statement. It was something engraved in his heart. The difficult days that once seemed impossible to overcome, the anxious phone calls, the money given without hesitation, all replayed in his mind like a slow-moving film. Hung stepped forward and lightly patted Ha on the shoulder. The gesture was simple, but full of closeness. "We're family. No one owes anyone anything." The words echoed gently in the morning yard, soft yet firm. There was no calculation, no sense of debt or repayment. Just the natural bond of people who see each other as family. Standing beside them, Hoài Ca's gaze softened. She understood that what mattered most now was not what had been given or received, but that the trust between them remained intact. The car slowly rolled away. The sound of the tires on the small road echoed softly, then faded into the distance. Hoài Ca stood beside Hung. Neither of them spoke, quietly watching until the car disappeared at the end of the road. The village path remained the same, straight and peaceful, lined with trees welcoming the early sunlight. When the car was no longer in sight, the space returned to its familiar stillness. Under the morning sun, the garden in front of the house became clearer. There were still patches of soil unfinished, empty spaces waiting to be filled. The ground was still rough and uneven, but it had been turned over, ready for a new planting season. The newly planted flowers stood quietly in the sunlight, their stems still thin, their leaves still young, as if waiting for time to prove they could take root deeply in this land. Life is the same. It is not always smooth. There are times when hardship weighs down the heart. There are times when scarcity slows one's steps. But if the soil is cared for, if the seeds are trusted, then even if it takes time, green shoots will rise. Just like the bond preserved in that small house, quiet, unassuming, yet strong enough to carry each other through long journeys. Hoài Ca gently held Hung's hand. Her hand was small but warm. It wasn't to seek support, but to stand strong together. She looked out at the garden ahead, her eyes brighter. "I believe things will get better from now on." The confidence in her voice was no longer uncertain like in the early days of the year. It had become steadier after everything that had happened. Seeing Ha overcome his struggles, seeing kindness placed in the right place, made her believe even more that what they were building would bear meaningful results. Hung looked at her, his eyes filled with trust and determination. As long as we keep trying together, the future will surely be bright. It wasn't a grand promise, but a quiet commitment. He knew there was still much ahead. His work, his hope of transferring closer to home, their plans for the garden, and for a more stable life. But when two people share the same direction, even challenges begin to feel lighter. Far away, a new journey was opening for Ha. The car was carrying him back to his project, to bigger plans, to his goal of completing everything, so he could soon bring his mother home. The road ahead might still be long, but now it was filled with confidence and determination. And here, in that small, simple house, hope continued to grow quietly day by day. It grew in every patch of soil being nurtured, in every flower waiting to bloom, in the trusting eyes of Hoài Ca and Hung as they looked toward the future. Not loud, not rushed, but steady and certain, like young shoots reaching toward the sunlight, like dreams slowly taking shape in the simplicity of everyday life.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Nay thì mình đang làm video về câu chuyện của Hoài Ca và Hùng nha mọi người. Thì ở trong tập hôm nay thì như mọi người cũng đã theo dõi là chúng ta nhận thấy được sự thay đổi lớn nhất ở nhân vật, đó là Hà nha. Hà thì như mọi người nếu như mà theo dõi Hoài Ca và Hùng từ lâu thì cũng đã biết anh là con trai của mẹ nuôi của Hoài Ca mọi người. Thì ngay từ trong những khoảng thời gian là trước khi mà Hoài Ca và anh quen nhau thì Hà là một người phải nói là khá là ăn chơi và trác táng. Thì sau đó khi mà Hoài Ca xảy ra vấn đề thì mẹ con anh đã cứu giúp, và từ đó có mối quan hệ là mẹ nuôi và anh nuôi giữa Hoài Ca và mẹ con Hải. Thì như mọi người cũng biết đấy thì sau này thì có nhiều vấn đề nữa xảy ra, và trong tập này thì mình đã chào tạm biệt mọi người, hẹn gặp lại mọi người ở video sau.